little bit. We have a lot more bodies in the room than we are expecting, and I just want to congratulate you guys for being here and looking at this. I'm a strong believer that whatever you focus on expands. Do you guys believe that? And in healthcare, which we should probably call disease care, right? We focus on disease, and so we see lots of disease. And I think that, in my opinion, we need to focus and look for more opportunities to promote health so we can have more health. And if we can do both of those very well, then we can really make some changes, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of what my quest has been, was a way to promote health and prevention. And by being able to speak to you guys here, I know that each one of you can affect the lives of thousands of people. And together we can affect the lives of tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands, and we can really make the change that's necessary here in the U.S. and around the world to get health to expand. Does that make sense? And so I'm going to go through a presentation here, which is really the due diligence that I did on Pharmanex, because I wanted to make sure that I was looking for something that I could believe in, that was safe, a product and a company with integrity. Because I was looking for all kinds of supplements. I was looking at all different catalogs. I realized that people are confused on what supplements to take. I thought I knew what I was doing until I started researching, and it seemed like the more research I did on all these different supplement companies, the more confused I became. And the reason was because there wasn't really a way to measure, and if we can't measure, we don't have a way of comparing. We're just listening to different opinions. And so when I saw the device that you're going to see here tonight, the biophotonic scanner, I saw that this was a tool that we've all been waiting for, to be able to focus on something that can promote health, that can provoke the change before disease occurs. Because the disease occurs 10, 20 years before we diagnose it, right? So if we can bring something to someone's attention and steer them to a better path of health, then we can really make some changes. We can take the bullets out of the gun instead of trying to fix the trauma that the injury from the bullet moved, right? And so I started to research different companies, and it led me to Pharmanex because of the scanner, and I started to research the company. And I came to realize that this is the company that I bought into, and this is a company that physicians are very comfortable buying into because of the level of science, where the founders came from, and I'm going to go through this presentation here. And what I hope at the end of tonight, that we've encouraged you, we built a different picture of how you can improve the lives of your patients, how you can improve the financial side of your business, and if you can do both, right, if you can do something that's right, that's good for the patients and it's good for you, then I believe it should be done. And we're going to ask you at the end of tonight that if you like what you've seen here, is we'll help you get started and we'll work with you to incorporate this into your practice, and we ask you to be a student here again. You know, don't be so rigid. You know, rigidity is equivalent to death, right? And when we're learning, when we're moving, you know, I want to bring out the student in you guys again, for those of you that are healthcare professionals. So, there's me and my wife and my son there when he was born. He's already 19 months old and running around, and it's amazing to see. And I can tell you that the nutrition that my wife took during her pregnancy, the nutrition that has passed on to my son, I mean, her health during her pregnancy has been absolutely amazing. I know Dr. Feld is a huge advocate of this for his patients as an OBGYN, and a lot of physicians are incorporating this into their practice because we want to do more, we want to promote health, and I think that patients want more health. And so you have this question here, and this is what your patients are doing. They're going out there and they're walking up and down these aisles, and they've got hundreds, thousands of different choices, and they really don't know what to take. We have no way of knowing whether it's working. And would you say on a scale of 1 to 10, how good is that? How good is that model? If your patients are going to get supplements and they just go to a store, is that good? On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say that the credibility of going into a store would be?
1.
1? I had some doctors say 0, right? No credibility. Friends are recommending things or listening to Home Shopping Network. It's a big problem. And so you start to realize that, and this was a study that was done, your patients are already taking supplements whether you want them to or not. More than half of them are, probably closer to 2/3 to 3/4 of them. Start asking. If they'll admit it to you, you'll find that they're all doing this. And they're all doing something different, and they're all doing things that are questionable, and we really don't know what the science is behind those products. A couple examples here of how bad it is. This was a vitamin shop. This is the Sun Sentinel. the owner of the store is having all of his employees change the expiration dates of the vitamins they were selling so they didn't have to throw them away. And how many of you practice in this area? Right? Your patients were probably buying stuff there. The vitamin shop, this was 2007, recalled their entire multivitamin line because it had 10 times the upper limits of lead in their product. 10 times. Now you would think they would do something about it, and just about a month ago, they got nailed again for lead contamination. The same company. Okay, so there are a lot of issues that are out there. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what is the quality of the supplements that people are taking? 0 potentially, right? Or it could even be less than that, it could be harmful. There was a product being sold at GNC that had 1,000, they accidentally put milligrams of selenium instead of micrograms. Being sold at GNC. GNC doesn't do quality control, they just look at profit margin. If people will buy it, they'll put it on their shelf. People are going into organ failure because of this product. And the lab that was supposed to be testing it was just a bogus lab. This stuff is more common than we'd like it to be. And what I'm saying to you is I hope that you get involved and you're evaluating Pharmanex just like I did and giving your patients specific direction. Where you can say, I know that Pharmanex is a good company. I know that they do the quality control that we look for. I know they do the safety studies and so forth. And I don't know about that other stuff that's out there, but I found a company that I can trust. And your patients will appreciate that because they're out there trying to figure out. There's just a study published in Medscape saying that 50% of patients are currently seeking alternative methods to lose weight. And out of those 50% of those are buying something somewhere. Did you guys see that? It was just a few weeks ago in Medscape. So people are looking for this kind of stuff. And I found Pharmanex to be really the best solution that I found and many other physicians have found as well. And here's the difference. Most vitamin companies or supplement companies are just a couple business guys getting together saying, people are buying this stuff, let's buy some cheap materials, let's spend a lot of money on marketing and we'll make a profit. That's the majority of the stuff out there. There are only a few manufacturers. Pharmanex is a little bit different, a lot different. Michael Chang is one of the original founders. These are the 3 founders. He's the former director of medicinal chemistry for Merck Pharmaceuticals for 15 years. He actually developed Mevacor. Joe Chang worked at Wyeth. He invented Lodyne, Rapamune, which is one of the second leading organ transplant drugs. He invented some photocancer drugs. And then Carl Djerassi is known as the father of the birth control pill, which is kind of an oxymoron in itself, but, but that's what these guys did. And what they were doing for the drug companies is their role was drug development research. They were looking for natural plants and extracts and things that have been used in Chinese medicine and herbal medicine, and figuring out what was legitimate, what was safe, what's the mechanism of action, what are the active ingredients, how does this work, is it safe, and can we develop a drug based off of these natural compounds. You see, what they got frustrated with was that the pharmaceutical companies have no interest in developing natural products regardless of the medicinal value. Because these scientists were realizing that during their research of 50,000 plant samples, that the natural products were more effective, more bioactive, and had less side effects than the drugs. And they wanted to bring that data to market. And the drug companies didn't want to do it because you can't patent things that are natural, so they had to change that molecule, produce some man-made chemical, right, which we call these pharmaceutical drugs, and then they would have a less desirable effect than some of these natural compounds. And so they left the drug companies just being frustrated because they looked at the supplement company and they said, we need to bring these natural things to market with the scientific standards that we've learned from pharma. And they left the drug company, started Pharmanex in 1995. They raised $46 million in venture capitalist funding from Fidelity, Whitner, Pritzker, and so forth. I mean, very well-established financial firms. They invested heavily in this company, and their business plan originally was they sold the products in 38,000 pharmacies, retail. Rite Aid, Walgreens, Walmart, and they competed in that aisle. Now, what they found was that when you have a higher quality product, and the consumer takes an average of about 3 minutes to make a decision. And what is that decision made of?
Money.
Packaging and price. How do you appreciate the science? And it's very difficult to do that. And so what they did is they grew the company, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about their science. They developed the 6S process, where they learned from pharma. Really, they would select the best possible ingredients, source the most effective raw ingredients or raw materials, identify the chemical structure, standardize things, do extensive safety studies, and then substantiate these through clinical. This was something that no other supplement companies were doing. And they saw that this was something very unique and needed to be done. Now, we also understand that there isn't one scientist that has all the answers, right? Dr. Bob doesn't know everything that you need to know about developing supplements. So you really need a team of different scientists from different backgrounds, and Pharmanex has built a team of PhDs in all these different disciplines in science so that they can work together and collaborate. They work out of several research centers, several out of China that they own and operate, one in Provo, Utah. They just acquired LifeGen, which was a spin-off of some researchers at University of Wisconsin. And they also just bought a spin-off company from some researchers over at Purdue that were doing some of the latest advancements in nutritional science. And they have about 100 scientists now full-time on their staff, where most companies have none, maybe one or two. I mean, here's a funny story. There was a company that had some really gimmicky way of testing supplements, and you like put your hand on something, and through galvanic skin response, it was supposed to tell you what all your systems and organs were doing. And there isn't really any good science behind it, but it was kind of a neat little toy, I guess. And I looked on their website, and their medical director, their medical director for this company lived in Key West. And I'm like, oh, I should call this guy. He's probably going to be really interested in what we're doing with this. And when I called and I asked for him, I said, hi, my name's Stephen Moore. I'm calling from Pharmanex, and I'm calling because we've got a new technology that I thought might be of interest to you, and I saw you're working with XYZ company. He's like, what company? He totally forgot that he was the medical director. That's how it evolved. So basically some company, paid him some, a few $1,000s a year, and he's the medical director. That happens quite a bit. He totally even forgot his involvement with the company. And Pharmanex has 100 full-time scientists. It's the largest research engine in the field. And you guys don't have time to sit there and read labels and read all the research and try and figure all this out. I'm not a biochemist and all this other stuff, so I can do the best that I can, but I don't even think I have anywhere near the credentials to really evaluate things. And so I evaluated this company, and I knew that if they had the credentials, they were doing the research, they had the right affiliations, then I could trust them to do this stuff way better than I can do. And you guys can trust them too, and I'll show you why. They also do affiliations, research affiliations with major leading universities all over the world, because even with 100 full-time scientists, nutrition can still be opinionated. So they have this global academic perspective of what's cutting edge, what's accepted science, because you see a study, well, omega-3s now cause prostate cancer, right? And whatever. I mean, do you guys believe that, omega-3s? No. But someone sees it, and then you see vitamin D is this, and there are all these different studies out there. But really when we do research, it's not one study or two studies that's compelling, it's really what is the consensus. And so what I liked about Pharmanex was they have these research affiliations where they can really take a global consensus of what academia is doing as well. They also have a medical and scientific advisory board that are some of the brightest minds in the world in the field of nutrition, that they bounce ideas off of it and guidance and things like that. So they've got a much different, completely different research engine than anything else that's out there. And for me, that was very impressive. They're also going into an area of gene expression science, or epigenetics, and they acquired LifeGen Technologies, which are the leading research in the world at understanding gene expression and how it relates to aging in different tissues in the body. These guys were on 60 Minutes. They've published over 600 peer-reviewed papers. They're the foremost authority on gene expression science as it relates to nutrition and aging. And they actually have the only study that's been accepted that can slow down, where they've proven you can slow down aging through caloric restriction. There's a 25-year study done in primates. You guys have probably heard of it. These are the guys that did it. And Pharmanex partnered with them and then recently acquired them, because now we can take nutraceutical intervention to a whole other level, looking at gene expression science that nobody else can do. Because we now own that database, and it's very exciting to see the type of products that we're able to develop right now. And that's where everything is going, right, with gene expression. So you look at that whole story, and then you throw your product on a shelf. How do you communicate that to the consumer? It's almost impossible, right? So what Pharmanex realized is that if they could educate consumers better about the science that went into their products, then they could grow the company better and impact more lives. And so they were looking for a better distribution channel. Merck and Pfizer, I believe, tried to actually buy the company back for about $135 million, and the founders of Pharmanex were like, if we sell back to those guys, we're right back where we started. So they were looking for other opportunities where they can continue with their philosophy and grow the company. And that's how Nu Skin actually came into the picture. Nu Skin's a direct sales company, primarily with skincare. They had some nutrition stuff going on, They've been in business for 29 years. They have a Dun & Bradstreet 5A1 rating, 53 markets now. I mean, they've done over $1 billion of R&D, and they're publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. And why that's important is because you don't want to get involved with a company that's going to be gone tomorrow, that's going to embarrass you, that's going to cut corners and things like that. And Nu Skin is a company that's very well respected. It's a Forbes top 5 most trustworthy company. Our stock is nearly tripled since the beginning of the year. I mean, it is amazing. We're trading at almost $90 a share right now. And so what Nu Skin was looking for was a research and development engine to advance the scientific integrity of their products. And Pharmanex was looking for a distribution channel of individuals that could go out and communicate. And if you could sit down with somebody and spend 5 minutes with them or 10 minutes, that's much more effective than someone looking in a store and just trying to figure out randomly what products they should take. And so they came underneath the Nu Skin umbrella as a wholly owned subsidiary. They went strictly through that model. They pulled all the product from a retail channel. It's not fair for you guys to have to compete against Walmart, right? And what happened was the first month under that acquisition, they exceeded the previous 12 months of sales combined out of 38,000 pharmacies. So it worked because people were listening, and when you can educate people, you can provoke change because people are confused on what they should be doing. Now the scanner came into the picture, which my question initially was, and this was the version that I started with, and then we've got the S2 version, and now we've got the newest one that just came out yesterday. So you guys are some of the first people to see it in the world. And this is Lester Packard. He's the foremost authority on antioxidant research for 40 years. And when I looked at this, I just said, is this just another one of those gadgets that some company has developed to sell more vitamins, like that galvanic thing, skin response thing, and some of these other things that are out there? And what I learned was the scanner wasn't developed by Pharmanex. It was developed for a totally different purpose. So I knew there wasn't any bias that went into the original development by Pharmanex with this technology. It was actually developed at the University of Utah at the Center for Biomedical Optics by these two scientists here. It was funded by NIH grants. How many of you are in eye care, ophthalmology, optometry? So we have one doctor. So you understand, and most of you also understand, that macular degeneration is a leading cause of blindness. And so what they knew at the NIH was if you have low levels of carotenoid antioxidants in your retina, you have a higher incidence of that disease. So they were looking for a way to measure the risk factors for that disease by measuring these carotenoids in the eye. Now, we're not going to go ahead and take a scalpel or a tissue sample of the retina. So they needed to develop a non-invasive method of doing it, and that's the original reason why the scanner got developed in the first place. And these researchers basically used Raman spectroscopy, which is Nobel Prize winning science, to be able to utilize this really where a blue light of 510 nanometers hits the carotenoid molecule, and without getting too geeky on you, it hits this, it vibrates back at a different frequency for a scattering of a 473 nanometer light. And based off the intensity of that light being reflected back, that determines the concentration of those antioxidants in the skin, in the body. Okay? Very, very accurate, much more accurate than chemistry because this is based off physics. And they were testing this in the eye, and then they realized that they could also get measurements in the skin, and then that opened up the doors to a lot of other applications of the technology. And I remember doing my research on this 10 years ago, and I'm looking at the patents from the University of Utah to really understand this. And the original intention of this was not just for risk factors of macular degeneration, but also cancer and heart disease, because those are all related to diet, nutrition, which is looking at antioxidants. I mean, pretty much most diseases are related to oxidative stress somehow, right?
Yeah.
So this was a tool that they were developing for that purpose. And what Pharmanex realized was that if they could get a hold of a device that measures antioxidants, then they could do the one thing that they've never been able to do. You see, you could sit down for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, a half an hour, dump all this research on somebody, but if you can give them a number, and then give them a product, and then improve that number in their body, that beats any research that they're going to read. And we measure cholesterol, blood pressure, blood glucose, and look at the impact that those things have done. Now we can measure antioxidants in the body, and so they saw that they could really show people how good their product was and prove it. And so the original machine looked like this. This was a 6-foot-long argon laser cooled with liquid nitrogen, ventilated through the ceiling. I mean, it was like half the size of this room. You know, not something you're going to have in your practice. But they saw the ability to invest in that and to shrink it down. And through the years, about $100 million, they got it to this device in 2003. They got it to this one in 2007, which is the one we're currently using. And then they just invested again into the latest one, which for those of you that haven't seen it yet, this is it right now. Pretty amazing. It's completely wireless, battery operated, and it syncs to an iPad. And it can scan in 30 seconds now. No liquid nitrogen or any of that nonsense, right? So now what we can do is we can really incorporate it into every single practice. We can get the world their number, just like we know blood pressure and cholesterol. Now we can get the world the number of something that's actually related to their health, to their diet. And if we can focus on improving that number, we can do what we really want to do, which is not get really good at diagnosing disease. I mean, that's important, but really get good at focusing on health and getting health to expand. That's what's needed. And this is what this technology can do. It's the best and most effective lifestyle modification tool that I have ever seen. And all the physicians that are working with this will agree with me. So let's go through kind of the studies real quick. It's all been peer-reviewed, it's all been published, but just so you guys can see a quick history of some of the 50-plus studies that have been done. This is a study showing that measuring carotenoids in the skin with our device is actually correlates to in the blood, which was the previous gold standard. In fact, measuring in the skin has been found to be more accurate and has less variability than measuring in the blood, because we're measuring in tissue. Blood changes day to day. Tissue, kind of like a hemoglobin A1C, changes gradually over time, several weeks to several months. And that's really what we want to look for when we're measuring diet and lifestyle. They then look at other antioxidants. So we're measuring carotenoids, right? What's the significance of that? Well, by measuring carotenoids, they're actually a very good marker and sensitive indicator of what the rest of the antioxidants are doing. Even though we're not measuring them directly, what we found, and this is third-party peer-reviewed research, that when the carotenoids are high, the rest of the antioxidant network tends to be high as well. And the question is why? So you start to look at the antioxidant network. You've got vitamin C, you've got glutathione, alpha-lipoic acid, flavonoids, vitamin E. These antioxidants all work together in a network. You know, they work together as a team. You know, some are water soluble, some are fat soluble, some are both, can go in the membrane and and within the cell as well. And they tend to regenerate each other. So they take some free radical hits and they can borrow and share electrons. But the carotenoids are the first line of defense. So when free radicals attack, they're the first line of defense. They're the most sensitive indicator. They can take about 30 free radical hits. They can't be regenerated. So once they take the hits, they're done. You need to ingest more of them to replace them. So they become a very sensitive indicator of oxidative stress in the body and a marker for what the rest of these guys are doing. Think of it as you're going to war. If your foot soldiers are intact, chances are the rest of the army is going to be intact as well. That's kind of how this works within the body. And these carotenoids are all found within the cell membrane. So this is a cross-section of the cell, and you can see that they sit at different angles depending on the length of the molecule within the membrane, and that's really where that protection is being done. We were just talking yesterday about the importance of the integrity of the cell membrane, and how that, that's how the cells interact with the outside world. And when that cell membrane gets oxidized, that phospholipid bilayer, it starts to get dysfunctional. It starts to get rigid. It doesn't exchange things right, and that leads to cell death and all kinds of issues. And so these antioxidants are purposely put in here by the body to protect it. And what we're able to do is measure the density or the amount of protection that these cells have for the first time. Now the studies were also done on fruit and vegetable intake. These are all peer-reviewed. We know fruit and vegetable intake correlates to disease, right, or health. So what we found is that the more fruits and vegetables you eat, the higher your scanner score will be. And that's why we say, get into the blue zone, because that's the equivalent of about anywhere between about 5 to 10 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, which is what we're looking for. We also found that obesity correlates to this score. So the more overweight you are, the worse your score is, and we know obesity is a big risk factor for disease. We also looked at smoking, and I was at a dermatology conference a while ago, and I was scanning a whole family, and families tend to scan about the same because they eat the same. And I scanned this family, and everyone was in the green and some were in the blue zone, and then they had like a teenager, 13 or 14-year-old girl, and she was in the red. And my first question to her was, I wonder why are you in the red? Do you smoke? And she hesitated for a split second in front of her parents, and she got mad for smoking. We can measure the damage that was happening because she was smoking. So that's actually important, that we're measuring oxidative damage. And this is a test, urinary MDA as well as urinary isoprostanes, which is a way of measuring oxidative stress or damage through the urine. And what we found is the higher your scanner scores are, the less damage we're actually measuring coming out in the urine. So this is a pretty significant number. This is legitimate. This is really important for people to know. It's also been validated by leading scientific symposiums all over the world where we've presented the science from the New York Academy of Sciences, the Gordon Research Conference, the American College of Nutrition, and it's been widely accepted by tens of thousands of scientists that have scrutinized the science already for you guys. We also won Most Innovative Company in the United States in 2005 by the American Business Awards. Apple Computer has won this award for innovation as well, and we won it not once for the scanner, but we also won it because of what we're doing with gene expression science. We won that in 2010 again. I don't have time to go over that, the gene expression stuff with you guys tonight, but it's really, really amazing science. And I did give out a flyer to everybody, so we welcome you to come to that. We actually have the founder of Pharmanex, Joe Chang, coming for that event. And he's going to talk a lot about what we're doing with gene expression science and how it relates to metabolism. So we got the medical rights to it, and if you really look at what the ability to measure does to how we can impact people's lives, how we can motivate behavior, how we can get people off some of that junk that has selenium, 1,000 times more selenium and lead and all these other things, are just products that just don't work in general, and we can actually put them on something better. Would you agree that it's better to do it this way than it is the way that they're doing it now? It's a lot better. Right? It doesn't need to be perfect, but it needs to be a lot better. And this is a lot better than the zeros that you guys said as far as them going to GNC or a friend and who knows what they're taking. And I think that that's what patients are looking for. I think that's what physicians are looking for. We're looking for a better way of doing things. We're looking for a way to focus on health, to expand health. And this is a way to do it. In 30 seconds, you can get someone's score and you can have that conversation and you can provoke the change that's necessary. Because what happens when someone gets their cholesterol score, they get a diagnosis with cancer, or they have some other test come out? They're willing to do almost anything, right? Well, wouldn't it be nice to get them to do almost anything to go out there and eat better, to lose weight, to exercise, to take quality supplements, and then be able to come back in a month or two and get validation that what they're doing was working, a pat on the back, you're doing good, you're on the right track. I think that this is something, and I believe that this is something that we all should be doing as physicians. And I hope that not only you decide to do it with us and with your practice, but you also start to tell your colleagues about it as well so that we can make the change that's necessary in healthcare.
I want to interject. In my office, I have my patients in the hallway and in the reception area comparing their scores to each other. And it's such a wonderful thing to see the interaction of people knowing who's got the best score and what they're doing. It empowers them.
So this was so significant. Now, when I started this 10 years ago, my mom was like, what are you doing with this new thing? My colleagues were like, what is that thing? You can't measure things with a laser. And I'm like, no, you can. You guys just don't understand it yet. And so, Dr. Oz had it on his show a couple years ago, and he says, and whenever you guys think of Dr. Oz, your patients listen to Dr. Oz. And they listen to him sometimes more than you, unfortunately, right? And so he actually invited us onto his show. He did a whole show about preventing cancer with antioxidants, and he said that this completely blew his mind. 94% of the people that got scanned scored in the bottom zone. And this is his audience. So he was astounded by the results, and he says, I thought people would score a lot higher, and they're not. They're clearly not getting enough antioxidants. 94% of your patients are not getting enough antioxidants. There is a huge need for this, just like there is a need for vitamin D and some of the other things that we do in healthcare. This is massive. This affects almost everybody. And we know patients aren't eating well. Now we can show them what's happening. Dr. Oz happened to scan 75,000, so it validated that what he was doing. He kind of walks his talk, as you can say here. So when you look here, it's really, I believe that this is the next new biomarker within healthcare. This is something that everybody should know. It should be treated just like a vital sign because it's so important. And it's the only way of measuring non-invasively antioxidants in the body. It's endorsed by the leading expert in the world. And what we can do now is, what's also pretty cool, is when we test people and they go on the supplements, Pharmanex will actually guarantee that their score will improve within 60 days. Guarantee. Now, does Lipitor do that? Well, nobody does that. They're so confident they have a 100% response rate with their product. And we can really help people get their scores up significantly, and you'll start to see remarkable health improvements as they do that as well, which we're going to hear from some physicians. So thank you for your time.